it was titled The Braids of My Life.
Oh.
And I've been thinking about that because that stayed with me as I was sort of plotting it a little bit out, trying to outline, although my outline just sucked. It was so bad. I ended up throwing it away. But still, thinking about the 3 strands of my life and braiding that together into this story, into a narrative that I hope works.
It's the Liars Club Oddcast, a weekly conversation filled with insights, tips, and secrets from the myriad of creative people who make stuff up for a living. Stay tuned and you can hear from New York Times bestselling authors, National Book Award finalists, debut novelists, screenwriters, musicians, composers, cartoonists, actors, stand-up comedians, line tamers, and all manner of creators who burn the midnight oil and sometimes their dinner. Whether you're a reader or a fellow writer, join us as we plumb the depths of the creative process for inspiration, semi-plausible stories, and a few laughs. So grab a libation, sit back, and spend some quality time with the creative folks who make stuff up for a living in a lively conversation with the Liars Club.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey!
Hi!
So, Angie.
Hi! Yes! Wait, hold on. I'm in my teenager's room and it's so messy, I can't even think. Okay, hold on. All right, okay.
While you're clean.
We'll call you back in 20 minutes.
All right. No, it's okay. Okay, I just had to clear off his desk. Okay. John, did you tell everybody how intimidated I am because I listened to Ed's podcast?
Yes, you did.
Guys,
I did tell them that you had said you weren't funny, and I had assured
I'm
you
really
that
not.
was fine.
Yeah.
Hi, you've been funny so far. You've been funnier than John so far.
Well,
not to
that's
look
probably
at.
not saying much, right?
That's
Yeah,
a pretty
it's
low
not.
bar,
That's
yeah.
pushing it. Yeah. The audio seems to be working, and I know who knows how that happened.
So we're going to introduce ourselves,
Okay.
and then I will introduce you, and then
Okay.
and then we'll ask you questions.
Okay.
And you better be fucking funny.
But no pressure.
And if I'm not,
No
you'll just
pressure
not
at all.
air it, right? We're not live, right?
Oh,
No.
Right. So you just,
I mean, you
just
are,
don't
but
air
they
it.
can't
Yeah,
hear us.
it's fine.
There's a 10-second delay, though, so you can change your mind halfway through whatever you say.
All right then. Well, that's it. We have everything in place. There we go. The pre-show patter is pattered out. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are once again with the Liars Club Oddcast, and we have a lovely, lovely guest with us. And my name is Keith Strunk.
I'm Kelly Simmons.
Mary Jones.
Gregory Frost.
And I'm John McGoran, and today we are very happy to have on the Oddcast Angie Kem, who moved as a preteen from Seoul, South Korea to the suburbs of Baltimore, attended Stanford University and Harvard Law School, where she was an editor of the Harvard Law Review, then practiced as a trial lawyer. Her stories have won the Glamour Essay Contest and the Wabash Prize in Fiction and appeared in numerous publications, including Vogue, New York Times, Salon, Slate, The Southern Review, Sycamore Review, the Asian American Literary Review, and Pank. Her debut novel, Miracle Creek, out April 16th, has won starred reviews from Kirkus and Library Journal and raves from Publishers Weekly, Library Reads, Booklist, and many others, including Book Riot, which has included it on lists including the best psychological thrillers to add to your TBR in 2019, 5 thrillers that will take you on a wild ride, and 50 spectacular new books you need to read this spring. Angie, Kim, congrats on your auspicious debut, and welcome to the Oddcast.
Oh, thank you. John, you should be my publicist.
I
That's
know.
awesome.
Well, we'll talk about that.
He needs the money, so don't worry.
Yeah.
We rent John out. The bad side is that once we rent him out, he doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case.
But the costumes are really scary.
So actually, I don't think you should hire me as your publicist because your publicist is doing a kick-ass job. I'm kind of astonished and envious at all the praise you've gotten. As we all know, every author has a finite allotment of praise that they receive over their entire career. So I'm wondering why you chose to use all of it on your debut.
Probably because I'm never, ever going to write another book again, just because I'm so sick of writing at this point.
That's fair.
Wait, oh yeah, has it been a bit of drudgery there?
No, it's not a drudgery. It's just that I'm one of those writers. Was it Dorothy Parker who said, I hate writing and I love having written? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I've been writing so much just this last, I don't know, like month or two or something like that, little things, even responses to interviews and things. And I'm just thinking to myself at 11 o'clock at night, like, why did I commit to doing this? Because I'm not good at writing fast. So that's why I say that.
Yeah.
Then add to that these dopey podcasts that want you to come on. I mean, my God, it must be awful.
No, I love podcasts. That's like my favorite thing ever. I love listening to podcasts. I've only been on one podcast, and that was such a thrill, and I love this. So thank you
it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we'll cure you of that by the time the half hour's up.
You'll regret this one.
After the Oddcast, I hate podcasts.
So I think that's one of the things that can be most surprising to a debut novelist is just how much other stuff goes on, and it is kind of a shock to the system, especially when you have to write another book, and yet you have to write all these blog interviews and do all these other things. So I want to ask you. I mean, it does seem like a very exciting debut. There's a lot of buzz. There seems to be a lot of support from your publisher. Not every debut goes down like this. Is this how you pictured it, or if not, how did you picture it?
I didn't picture it at all because I'm relatively new to writing. So I don't have an MFA. I haven't been writing since I was 10, like so many other writers. I started writing maybe, I think, like 9-10 years ago. And before that, I was a lawyer. I've been a management consultant. I've been an entrepreneur. And then I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, for 10 years. And so I didn't have any author friends, so I didn't know what to expect at all. And it's really, this whole publishing industry is a complete shock to me because I just haven't really focused on it. And so, but I'm really, really grateful. My publisher has been awesome. They have been so supportive of me, and I love my publicists. You're right, John. I definitely would not hire you.
Yeah, it's a wise move.
Nobody would.
Right.
So, at what point did you realize that the book was, or have you realized yet that the book was getting the response that it's getting? That there was this kind of buzz and this excitement about it?
I'm not really sure. I think so. My publisher did tell me that they were really excited about the book and that they were going to be really showing a lot of love for it. But I sort of figured that all publishers say that to all their authors, and I mean I'm not really sure because I think it's 2.5 weeks away from pub date, and I'm not sure what's going to happen when it's actually out in the world. So I'm really excited about the buzz, and I'm excited about the reviews and the early reviews. And actually what I'm most excited about are the reader reviews, like on Goodreads and the Amazon Vine. So regular people, not, the professional reviewers, saying that they read it. And my book has to do with immigration, and it's also got some special needs children's parents and parents of children with medical issues. And when people who have faced that in their own lives have written to me emails or on reviews on Amazon and Goodreads and saying how much the story resonated with them and made them feel like they weren't really alone, that other people who were in similar situations had similar thoughts, sometimes shameful thoughts that they had. That really made me tear up and just think, wow, all this hard work was really worth it. So that's what I've loved the most.
So you told us a little bit just now about your book. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? Like, is it a genre book? Is it what is the plot kind of about?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the genre is a mix. It's a literary courtroom drama is what we're calling it. And it's about a Korean immigrant family and about a young single mother who's on trial for murdering her son.
Nice.
And the miracle.
You hear the word murder.
Nice.
Yeah.
She said,
Nice.
nice. How often do you get that?
It's a sick crowd here. I apologize.
Great.
Yay.
Who said you weren't funny?
So she's only accused of murdering her son. Let's remember that. Okay. So Miracle Creek is a small Virginia town where this Korean family, the Yu family, runs something called the Miracle Submarine. And it's not a real submarine. It's a pressurized chamber for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
Sure.
Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think a couple of us had featured it in our writing.
Really?
Yeah,
or been locked in a chamber.
Yeah.
One or the other. Yeah.
So go on.
That's so cool. Okay, so anyway, so it's a standard treatment for things like, burns and carbon monoxide poisoning, but it's an experimental treatment that's been popular as of late for things like autism, cerebral palsy, infertility, hearing loss, things like that. And what happens is one day with 6 people sealed inside, so it's a group chamber, so up to 4 patients and their caregivers. Somebody sets a fire by the oxygen tank, which is outside, which explodes and it kills 2 of the people. And so in one sense, Miracle Creek, my novel, is a legal thriller. So the readers become the jurors, and as the murder trial goes on, you uncover secrets from that night of the explosion to find out who set the fire and why and how. But more than the mystery, we explore the lives of these characters, the Yus, the Korean immigrants, and the patients and their mothers who were in the chamber that night. And we see the sacrifices and desperation even that comes with special needs parenting and immigrant life, especially in rural America when you're so isolated.
Wow. And so is some of this based on your own experience
as
an immigrant? Yep.
Definitely. So I immigrated as a preteen, and I came with my parents. I was an only child, and we settled in Baltimore. And my parents, like the characters in the novel, first settled in Baltimore, and the parents ran a dangerous grocery store in a dangerous part of town. And that part is all true. And so they were in this grocery store. My parents basically lived there because the store hours were midnight, 6 a.m. to midnight. And and I stayed in the suburbs in Lutherville, Maryland, right next to Towson, with my relatives, with my aunt and uncle and my cousin. And so and it was a really difficult time because I didn't speak English. I was 11. And so, being in middle school, not speaking English, not understanding English, and wearing weird clothes, not understanding the culture, not understanding references, not understanding the fact that I was bullied secretly. Not secretly. Yeah. They were doing it in front of me. I just didn't understand it.
Oh, man.
So all that stuff was really difficult to go through. And then my parents, in the meantime, were in this grocery store, and my dad got shot once. It was such a dangerous neighborhood. So it was, a really, really hard time. So I think I put a lot of that emotion into the characters in this novel for sure.
Terrific.
So the biography of you I read also indicates that you have some experience with the hyperbaric treatments for your child. Was that?
Yes, definitely. So I have 3 sons, and one of them was born deaf in one ear. And also, when he was a preschooler, was diagnosed with celiac disease and really bad ulcerative colitis. Mm-hmm. And the hearing loss, we sort of dealt with speech therapy and things like that. But the celiac, it was so hard because back then, this was like 10 years ago, and there was no such thing as gluten-free back then, like there is now. And I am the world's worst cook. I can burn water very easily and soup on a weekly basis. And so for me, I had to learn to cook everything from scratch, even preschool snacks. So it was really a difficult time. But in any case, but that was still manageable. But what was not manageable with traditional medicine and treatments and things like that was the ulcerative colitis. And so this little guy was not gaining weight. He was throwing up. He was saying that, everything hurt. And so one of my friends told me about this oxygen chamber that was opening about 10 minutes from my house, from our neighborhood. And she told me about it, and it was an experimental treatment for ulcerative colitis, still is. It's not approved. There's no double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that I am aware of, and I was sort of a stickler for things like that. But still, at the same time, when you have a little kid who's your child, whom you love, and who is crying and nothing is helping, you become desperate. And so I talked to the doctors about it, and with their blessing, we decided to try it. And it was a group chamber, just like the one that is featured in my novel. And I would go in there with 3 other families or patients, and you're sealed in for an hour at a time, and you call them dives, and it looks like a submarine. So the first time we saw it, my son said, "Oh, look, that's a submarine," because we had watched the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. That's a family movie night.
Yeah, cool.
And it
don't
looked
think we
like
had
that.
one like that.
Yeah, it looks like that because it's got the portals and it's got like the sealed in hatch and things like that. So we went in, and it was, except that it was blue. It was painted blue, not yellow, but still.
There we go. It's a blue submarine.
Yeah, exactly. It was a blue submarine. Exactly. That's what we called it. So we'd go in and and I elected to do double dives, which is like 2 sessions a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, just to get it over with as quickly as possible. And so you would be sealed in with mostly the same families, and there's nothing to do because the risk of fire with the oxygen, with the pure oxygen around, they won't let you go in with like synthetic clothing. They gave you all cotton clothing. They won't let you. Definitely no smoking. Definitely no smoking. No phones, no toys, no nothing.
No
so you go in
barbecuing.
there.
No.
Yes, definitely not. No food either. And so we went in. We hear, Barney song.
Yes.
Oh, stop
I'm
it.
sorry. Trigger warning.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And so there's only so much of that you can take. So the adults would talk to each other, and we would like compare life stories, and we would talk to each other about what things our kids are going through and things like that. So it just became very intense and sort of raw, and it was like a crucible, like literally and emotionally. Sure. And so when I started writing and I thought about, what was going to be the setting and sort of the general plot of my novel, I immediately thought of the setting and thought, okay, I have to include that somehow. And then because of my courtroom experience, I wanted to inject that in there. And so a murder trial with somebody dying from, the fire with the pure oxygen, that sort of seemed like a natural.
Wow.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your experiences as an immigrant and as a writer writing about immigrants. And I'm wondering, you kind of told us a little bit about how the experiences, the characters' experiences are based on yours. I'm wondering, did the process of writing these characters and their experiences change in any way your perception of your own experience?
That's such a good question because I had always thought about my own experience as mine, like from the child's perspective in an immigrant family. And I think being an only child, I tend to be more probably self-centered than I should, but even so, it wasn't until I started writing this novel, and one of the main characters is the mother in this immigrant family, young Yu. And it wasn't until I started writing from her perspective that I really considered what this experience must have been like for my own mother.
Mm.
You are yourself an immigrant.
Yep.
You're from Harvard Law. You were an editor of the Harvard Law Review, right?
Yes.
And so you also had a child who had to have the hyperbaric treatment. So it feels like for the novel you have taken from different facets of your own life, and everybody says write what you know.
And you're an arsonist, right?
Yeah.
Arsonist, yes.
And an arsonist, right. But this is that write what you know where you've kind of show people what that means. Like you're borrowing elements from your own life and assembling them into a thriller which is not your own life.
Right.
I'm assuming anyway. Yeah.
Right. I've never actually been a defendant in a murder trial.
Okay,
No.
sure enough.
No.
Still
And
early.
yeah, it's interesting when I was starting to think about writing this novel. So just doing like free writing by hand. I went to the Smithsonian. There was this exhibit of Asian American artists. It was the first ever at the National Portrait Gallery, and I went and I saw. I don't remember the artist's name now, but I saw this beautiful and really huge. I think it was a drawing, or maybe it was a painting. I can't remember. But anyway, it was. It's the picture. It was a braid, like 3 braids, and it was titled "The Braids of My Life."
Oh.
And I've been thinking about that because that stayed with me as I was sort of plotting it a little bit out, trying to outline, although my outline just sucked. It was so bad. I ended up throwing it away. But still, thinking about the 3 strands of my life and braiding that together into this story, into a narrative that I hope works. And yeah, so it's the immigrant braid, it's the H-spot mom braid, and, the courtroom trial lawyer braid, and sort of putting that together and twisting it into a whole that hopefully, stays together.
Fascinating. Did you do any murder trials or crime? I mean, defense? Not defense. Criminal trials?
Yeah.
Prosecution.
Yeah. So,
Lawyering? Did you do any criminal lawyering? Well, criminal work is different.
Yeah. So, as a law student, I interned at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and also the Washington, D.C. Public Defender Service. And so I did criminal defense in those ways. And then I also, as a lawyer, I did pro bono work with death penalty appeals. Ooh. Death penalty was like a huge area that it was my thesis in college. It was something that I'm still very interested in. And so I did it from that perspective, but I never actually did a murder trial. So my trials that I did as a lawyer were all spats between people over contracts and things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did I know you've written a lot of short fiction. Was it of a similar genre?
So I think my short fiction was all just straight literary and some humor. So I've done both humor, short stories and essays. And like the one that I did for Glamour was it was an essay about how I learned English by reading Sidney Sheldon novels, Sidney Sheldon novels, in particular Rage of Angels, which was like my favorite because it had Jennifer Parker, who I don't know if you guys know that book, but she's this like beautiful, amazing lawyer, and she's like the best lawyer in the country. She's amazing in the courtrooms, and she is the secret lover of like this guy a senator who becomes the U.S. president, and at the same time, simultaneously, is the lover of the biggest mafia boss in the U.S. So like I was just like, oh my God, I want to be Jennifer Parker. I think that may be one of the
So how is Big Tony doing?
Yeah, exactly, right. I've not forgotten the question.
The answer was better than the question.
You have written, a fair amount of short fiction and nonfiction. So what was the most surprising difference about the novel writing process compared to the previous writing that you had done?
Just how endless it is. I would just be like, I'm such a slow writer. I mean, seriously, I'm the world's just slowest writer. It took me so long. Like the first chapter took me, I think, 3 months to write. And so I'd just be like, oh my goodness, this novel is never going to fucking end. Wait, am I allowed to say that?
Yes, please do. Say it again.
So I was just like, how much longer is this going to go on? And then towards the end, I'd be like, okay, you know what? Forget the ending. Like, who cares? I'm just going to have it end. Like, I'm going to have something shocking happen in the middle.
Everybody would just be relieved it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially you. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I think that's the hardest thing. And also, like, I did try to outline. I'm not like a huge pantser. I like to know, sort of have in my mind what I'm going to write, but I just found that I couldn't do that with a novel. I mean, I had an outline, but like maybe 3 chapters in, I would look at my outline. I'd be like, well, that's already, gone. So so that was really, really hard. And I felt like everything was iterative. Like I had to write 3 chapters, and then I would like have to completely revise my outline, and then write another 3 chapters, and then completely revise it again. Like stuff like that. So it was just really long, and it just takes so much patience, which I do not have. I'm so not patient. So it was hard.
Are you under contract for another book?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not under. No, my contract was for 1 novel and 1 novel only for this one. I mean, I sold it, after it was all written and everything, and so because I told my agent, like, I just can't have a deadline for writing a second novel. Not with 3 kids, and they're still, one of them's still little. The other 2 are in high school. They need a lot. So I just couldn't see myself being able to write to a deadline and have sanity in my life. Yeah. And I have high blood pressure, and I was like, I just don't need that,
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So, I was going to ask, because, it can be really jarring to process if, writing a novel and having all the time in the world to write it, and then, having another one due in a year or a year and a half or 2 years or whatever. But I do want to ask, having written one, do you think that your process will be different for the next one? Do you think that there's things that you've learned in writing the first one that will, change how you do the second one?
I don't think so. So my process for the first one was just write one chapter at a time, and I have a writing group.
Wait, you don't write 3 chapters at a time?
No, one chapter at a time, and then I would just submit it to my writing group and get feedback, and then let that inform how I wrote the next chapter, and so on and so forth. And then once I was done with the whole thing, then I sort of stepped back, took like 3 months off, let it marinate, and then read the whole thing, revised, and then gave the whole thing to my writing group and beta readers and things like that. And then I sort of did the same thing over again a couple more times until I was satisfied. So I think that's how I would do this one, except that I think I would probably include my agent in my, my early beta readers thing.
I read in the interview you did in Publishers Weekly, you said you did a lot of free writing in the first person from the different point of view characters to find a distinct and believable voice. And I find that really interesting. Can you tell us about that, about that experience and how you got the idea to do that?
Sure. So it wasn't really an idea that I pursued as much as just my fear of actually writing. I think I was just so afraid of and intimidated by this idea of, I'm starting a novel. It was just a really intimidating thought. So for like 6 months or so, I just wrote by hand in a notebook in scrawls that I can't even, make out like what the words are anymore. And I sort of did almost like diary form, and first person narration from the various characters of what they thought and what they were doing on the day of the explosion, and what they thought and were doing sort of the day of the first day of the trial, which is about a year later. And so I did that, and I did that for a couple of reasons. One is I just wanted to get to know some of these characters so I could see who are the POV characters going to be and things like that. And then the second thing is, even though it's in third person, there are, and there are 7 different POV characters, and it's in third person, but I really don't like it when I really like very close third person, and almost like it feels like first person. And so I really wanted to have that intimacy of the voice. And, like 2 of the POV characters are guys. 5 are women, but they're very different from each other. Some are sassy, some are, much more reserved, things like that. And I just wanted to just make sure that I got the voice right, because I don't like it when I read a close third person POV, whether it be a story or novel or whatever, and they all sound the same. And so I wanted to make sure that they didn't all sound the same, that I had the person and their voice in mind.
Did you, when you started writing the manuscript then, in third person, did you have any problem shifting, from first to third? Did you find yourself lapsing back into it?
I don't think so. The only one that I kept in first person was actually the first chapter, which is the incident, which is almost like a prologue. It serves almost like as a prologue. And then the rest of the novel is divided into the 4 days of the murder trial. And I don't think that I had any problems doing third person. I think that the third person I used is so close that it's almost like a first person, with a lot of interiority and things like that. So for me, it wasn't a problem to go straight into the third person. Yeah.
So we're coming up on the end of our time here, but I just wanted to ask before we get to your favorite segment, the 2 lies and the truth.
2 lies and the truth.
Before we do that, I just want to ask what you're working on next, or do you know yet?
I do know. So I have 2 different novels, ideas that I've been sort of going back and forth on, and I think I've settled on one of them. And this one is a little bit different. It will have there is a mystery element to it, because in the beginning, what happens is that a child who has autism and is nonverbal goes on a walk with his father, who's the primary caregiver, and the boy comes back, but the father doesn't.
Nice.
And because he's nonverbal, we don't know what happened.
That's great.
To the father. So I think
great. That's a great premise.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about it.
I'm really annoyed.
Yeah.
That I didn't think of that.
So do you think you're leaning into genre a little more?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what genre you would call Miracle Creek, and because it does have elements of everything. I don't know if you guys know Christopher Zagorski.
Yeah,
Bolo
sure. Bolo Books,
yeah. So he just released, I just read it 30 minutes before we got on this podcast. He just wrote a review of my book today.
I saw it, but I haven't read it.
It was so. I'm so grateful, because he's such an esteemed reviewer, and so his words mean a lot to me. And the way that he described it is that this is Miracle Creek. The first novel that we're talking about is a literary novel that will appeal to mystery lovers, or something like that. Yeah. So I think that's how the second one will be as well. Possibly a little more on the literary side, just only because I'm not sure if it's going to have the same courtroom elements that this first one did. And I just had so much fun with the courtroom stuff, especially the cross-examinations and the twists and things like that. So I really hope you guys enjoy it.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to it. Any thought of going back to practicing law at any time?
Never.
Never.
Absolutely. ever.
How do your parents feel about that?
Oh, so it's, actually the first piece I ever wrote was in Slate. It was about the so-called mommy track. And I wrote it because I was pregnant, I think, with my second one, or maybe I don't know, all the years blur together. But in any case, what happened was I went back to my law school reunion, and I was talking to all of my friends from my class, and it seemed like so many of us, especially the women, were at home, and some of the people who were working full time still, and there weren't that many. The full-time people were no longer lawyers. And so it was really interesting. And I did this huge, I tried to contact all of the women in my class and things like that, and tried to figure out how many of these women are on this so-called mommy track, which I hate the name, but still. And one of the things that I wrote about in that piece is how guilty I felt for my parents, because they spent I don't remember what the tuition was at that time, 200 years ago when I went to law school. But whenever it was a lot of money, and they sacrificed a lot for it. And I felt like I squandered it by going to law school, not practicing for all that long, and then going into a completely different field. And then that got worse when I was home with the kids, because then I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm not doing anything with any of my education. So it made me feel so guilty. But my parents have been really supportive, and they're not the sort of typical Asian tiger parents type things at all. So
And in all fairness, you created 3 grandchildren. That's a beautiful
exactly
thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the important thing is that you feel guilty.
Yes.
And all things are in balance. You created grandchildren and you
It
feel
all
guilty.
works out.
That's perfect.
Completely.
All right.
Guilt and shame is big in Korea. Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to that time.
The truth lies.
I know you've been looking forward to it.
Here we go.
So unfortunately, we lost Kelly. She had to
She
take off.
evaporated.
She evaporated. Yeah.
We put her in the submarine,
no.
and she's gone away.
That's right.
So.
Yes, exactly.
So
For an hour.
Okay. So lay it on us. Two lies,
Okay.
one truth.
Okay. All right. In high school, my friends and I hid alcohol by putting it in shampoo bottles.
A little
I
extra,
can see how that could go
a little
wrong
extra
real
flavor to
fast.
the.
Miller Lite was the shampoo of beers, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. You ready for the next one?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So for this one, you have to know that I'm a pianist. And I was in when I was little and stuff.
And should we believe you when you
anyway.
tell us that?
No, of course not.
So I'm missing 4 bones in my fingers and toes. So my pinkies are so short that I couldn't reach an octave.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Here's the third. Also in high school, I helped my friend edit Penthouse Forum letters, which were published.
Really?
Love it.
Nice.
I thought Stan Lee wrote all
Okay.
of those. No.
Wow.
There you go.
Those are good.
Those are great.
Three
Yeah.
things.
So
Those are the 3 things.
So I'm just going to jump right in because frankly,
Okay.
when I play this game, I throw all sensibility to the window, just go for the ones I like. Basically,
Yeah.
I love the idea
Okay.
that you edited the Penthouse letters. That's the truth as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what you say.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of like that too.
That's
Yeah.
the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I'm omitting the shampoo thing because my kids were much more practical. You would know right away you can't get all the shampoo out of the bottle.
Yeah.
So
It's a one-time event.
yeah.
We're
So,
bubbly tonight.
so that's. I'm going to go with the piano because I used to play piano too, and I know how important that octave
That
reach
octave
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the piano too. So you've got 2 and 2.
All right, 2 and 2, no shampoo.
So if it turns out to be
Very
shampoo,
nice,
you've
John.
stumped
So
us
which
all.
one was the truth?
Okay, so the truth was the piano,
Yay.
but there's elements of truth in all of them.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So the truth, that piano is the absolute 100% truth. See, this is the problem with this game for me, and this is why I told John beforehand that I'm really bad at this game, because I'm tempted to like inject some flavor into my truths to make them slightly more interesting. Although I didn't with the piano one. Yeah. And then with the lies, I'm just like, well, everything I can think of has to have some basis in, my life. So anyway. So the shampoo bottle one, that was actually my husband who did that. Ew. What my friends and I did, because we were a lot smarter, is we put them in empty saline solution bottles, which works really, really well.
Yeah.
That works.
You just don't put it in your eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Penthouse Forum letters, it was actually just one letter, and it was not published. Yeah. So that was the only thing. Yeah,
so that was your first rejection.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't mine. It was my friend.
But that was great. That's a great idea for high school kids.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much.
What's a great idea for high school kids? Direct Penthouse letters.
Yes. What fun!
Jesus.
Yeah. I have to make sure
after school activity.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I have to make sure that my high school sons never, ever listen to this. Ever.
Yeah, we'll make sure of that.
It's no problem. This is only released on like one small place. Nobody ever hears it. Don't worry about it.
Sure. What could happen?
All right, Angie. Well, congratulations on the upcoming blockbuster and all the great reviews it has already received. And we're all dying to read it. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Angie.
Woo!
If you enjoy the Liars Club Oddcast and the other fine shows on Project Entertainment Network, check out the cool stuff for sale at the Project Entertainment Network store, or consider supporting Project Entertainment Network on Patreon.com. And as always, many thanks for your continued support.
May I have your attention for the morning announcements? Please be advised the Lunch Ladies Book Club is coming to Project Entertainment Network. Join Shelley, Mimsy, and Ashley as they dish out a deep review of a book. Horror, thrillers, whatever they want to read and review. A blonde, a brunette, and a redhead walk into a bookstore and they're serving up hot book reviews. The Lunch Ladies Book Club, coming soon, exclusively on Project Entertainment Network. Would you now stand for the national anthem?
Don't get your lunch money stolen! This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.